It's not in the book or in the writer that readers discern the truth of what they read. They see it in themselves. If the light of truth has penetrated their minds. St. Augustine of Hippo. The Dragon Pod from Bending Not Breaking. Book 5, Ocean. Chapter 3, Nightmares and Revelations. Welcome back to another episode of the Dragon Pod. I am so thrilled to have everyone here listening to this really neat episode of the Dragon Prince. There's so much going on, and I'm just glad that you all are going to be with me here. But guess what? I'm not alone. We are not alone. We have a friend and returning guest joining us, and I'm thrilled to reintroduce to you all Jason Simpson. Jason uses he, his pronouns, a returning guest on the podcast, dog lover extraordinaire, has a loving family, enjoys the Biscoff spread enough to be reluctant to share it. And you all likely know him from the Dragon Prince as Viren, Barius, and Terbium. And we gladly welcome him to the podcast once again. Jason, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you. That's a lovely intro. I appreciate that. I do love dogs so much. I do love Biscoff too. It sounds like a perfect day. Dogs and Biscoff.
Yeah, only thing missing, maybe a beer, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Throw beer in there for sure. Yeah.
That's awesome. Oh man. Well, it's been a while since we've had a conversation and a whole new
Yeah.
season has dropped. And I'm curious just what's new with you? I'm hearing that you've been busy, but what are some of the things that have been bringing you joy these past several months?
Good question. Yeah, I've been working a fair bit. I work at a college in Vancouver in the film arts department, so it's been very busy there, and that actually has brought me a great deal of joy. The
Oh,
people I work with, but my students who I've been with since January, um, just working with them on their films. So actors, writers, directors, and getting their uh, voiceover demos record. So just school stuff, but the people themselves. It's such a great class, and I really grew to love them, and they brought me a lot of joy. My kids, summer's here. Well, summer's almost over.
yeah.
Just spending the summer with my kids when I can, because they're just growing and growing. So, I have a 15 and almost 19-year-old, and just watching them become different people is incredible and incredibly frustrating at the same time. But more joy than not.
Yeah. Wow. And
Yeah,
when I recall, I think at least one of them is doing some voice acting too. It's pretty cool.
yeah, yeah. They both do a bit of work. My son is more of the actor. He's got on a couple different shows. My daughter's got something coming up, but I won't talk about that right now. That'll be later.
Yeah, for sure. No worries.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
exciting. It's just I just imagine that you are cultivating and creating something that I hope to have if I ever have a family one day, which is just an artistic, creative family,
hmm
a family that is willing to lean into creativity. And that creativity isn't always via, theater, but it definitely is an integral piece, I think, to the family dynamic from my perspective. So I love hearing about that. That's such a cool experience.
That actually, what you just said there ties into something we'll be talking about later. I won't bring that up now, but I know we're going to discuss it. But uh, I know there's a big fancy word for it, but it's exactly what I'll be talking about. You're going to ask me a specific question later. I know it, and that is the major part of my answer. So I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, well, spoiler alert, y'all. Here
Yeah,
we
sorry, I
go.
probably didn't even need to say that because there's no context or information given. But be
No,
ready, everyone.
yeah, the mystery. This is not the mystery of Erebos. This is the mystery of Jason. Here we go, y'all.
Yes, please.
Pitting you as the enemy because Erebos is also the enemy. But anyway,
Yeah.
Um, we're gonna return to you being the enemy quite yet, and you being the primal source for us as listeners and engagers on this podcast, and thinking about the making of this particular episode, and if there is any sort of behind the scenes situation that you remember from the making of this that comes to mind. I remember the last time we asked you this, it was all of them were recorded during COVID, and you were kind of giving us insight into what it was like to record separate from one another versus being together. And so I'm just curious, what was
Yeah.
different about recording for this episode, or a moment that came up?
Uh, Technically speaking, there wasn't a whole lot different, um, because we still had the same situation. But given the context, or the content rather, uh, this was I'm an emotional person. I get, and that's a very broad brushstroke, but I tear up at the smallest of things because I make connections with my own. I see a father and a son in a dumb TikTok video, and I just get teary. So I get emotional really quickly, and I think that serves me very well in my work, especially in this show. So in this season, I had a lot of solitude, and voice work can be a lot of solitude at times. But I had a lot of studio time where it was just me, not working with other characters. Um, Given I'm trying to avoid spoilers, but are we saying spoilers or?
For the season, you are all square to say whatever you'd like. Yeah.
Okay. So there's lots of moments, there's a lot of moments where Viren is reflecting and being thrust into moments where he sees his children
Yeah.
as like, even thinking about it now, I'm getting a little, because I look back at how my kids grew, and, uh, my children are adopted, and they were adopted. They were 3 and 6. And I look back at all the mistakes I made, and I want to rail against myself for being a terrible parent, or just making bad mistakes. And so connecting with how Viren was feeling, I had a real sense of solitude
Mm.
in a negative. I felt lonely in
Yeah.
the booth in those moments, which was great. I loved connecting with that, but it was real for me. I was like,
Yeah.
there's no one here to lock eyes with and go, oh yeah, we're just pretending. It was there was sadness, and there was anxiety, and there was angst, and then I'd hear Aaron say, yeah, great take, and I'd be like, oh yeah, right.
Yeah, totally.
Acting. So that really stood out for me, and I cherish that. I don't get that in my work. So that opportunity was wonderful.
Oh man, I just part of me is envious, and I don't take that the wrong way. I don't want to be lonely, but just the ability to tap into your body and your emotion and your
Yeah.
what you are feeling, and to be able to access that is such a gift. And it's a little counterintuitive because no one wants to feel lonely and feel that solitude, but at the same time it makes it a little less scary, I guess. If you're able to tap into it like that, perhaps.
Yeah. I think actors, I can't speak for all actors, but I think we do long for that.
Yeah.
I do long for the moments where, whether I'm with someone or not, I can feel terrified or
Hmm.
abandoned, lonely, because there is safety outside of that. So to be able to jump into that fully, there's nothing like it. It's an odd feeling
Yeah.
knowing what I'm feeling in a booth with people watching me. It's the same feeling I feel when I'm in my bathroom at 2 in the morning, bawling my eyes out because I've made a terrible error as a parent,
Hmm.
and I now have to, apologize to my kids and figure out how to fix it. You don't get to applaud and bow and walk away from that. That's
Yeah.
real life. So to be
Yeah.
able to feel that same feeling and then step aside from it, oh, that's glorious.
Yeah. I wish we did more applauding for for people feeling the 2 o'clock in the morning in their bathroom.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
yeah, I
Like I
do. Yeah,
the culture we had that we were able to do that. Oh
yeah.
man. Wow. I'm really grateful that you're able to tap into that and share that with us. And I mean, that's just what a cool experience.
It's my pleasure. But listen, uh, listening to you and your podcast, your episodes, you are such a proponent and such well, if I say fighter for mental health and for expressing feelings and emotions and normalizing that.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, that's what people hear when they listen to your work. So I applaud you for constantly being an advocate for that.
Well, thank you. I'm
Yeah,
that's coming across because that's definitely been a goal.
yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. Oh, wow. Okay. So, oh, wow. I feel like we could just sit here for a little while, but I will I will push us forward into our next segment, which is learning about what we're going to be talking about today. Yes, we're talking about episode 3, but we are also talking about it through a lens of Revelation, and it's a little on the nose because it's coming from the title, Nightmares and Revelations. But that's a big word, and I felt
Yeah.
it was worth unpacking to I was talking to some of the patrons on Patreon about like, hey, I got the carte blanche, choose whatever lens you want from one of our guests, and they were like, why not choose this? And I
Oh,
agreed.
cool.
It's a really big word, and I can't wait to kind of learn more about it. So I'm curious, like, what does it mean? What does revelation mean to you? And we'll go from there.
Um, yeah. Wow. I,
Yeah, right? It's a big word.
yeah. I think I guess my answer before I say anything will be very basic, and I'll fumble for words, but I think the general idea for me is finding out something, revealing something that a truth that I didn't know, but it comes as a surprise or a shock,
Mhm.
or it's so epic, it's so big. I mean, I look at look at the book of the Bible, the book of Revelation, um, and if you read through that, I mean, that's what it is. Just the scrolls. We're not going to get into that, of course, but it's just all this insight and what is to come, and you can say prophecy pouring out, and this will happen. This is going to happen. Um, I guess it could also mean this is happening.
Yeah.
Going away from that specific example, but it was revealed to me that this is happening. This is a revelation, or this has happened already, and I didn't know it. Maybe
Yeah.
that's counter to what the word revelation means. I don't know.
It's fascinating, right? There's so much there to unpack. And I love, frankly,
Yeah,
I think it's important that you bring up the biblical reference because it's so integral to the word. Like if you look up the word definition, like the first um definition often is referring to God. And so it may not be
sure.
Christianity, it's referring to God. And so
Yeah,
the Webster one, for instance, the first definition is an act of revealing or communicating divine truth. Uh,
yeah,
and then the non religious definition is an act of revealing to view or making known and uncovering, otherwise bringing to light that which had been previously or wholly hidden, or only obscurely seen. And it's really interesting to think about because there's a lot that uh, there are layers to revelation. I think one, like, this story is intentionally being revealed in a very specific way by the writers and by the story, right? And
hmm
so the watcher of this show is getting a specific kind of revelation, and that's intentional. And then there's this, if we allow for the mystery, this divine revelation that may come in that leads to something that we can't name. Where did this come from? Where did this information, how did I just come to my head? And I think that we'll be able to kind of parse that out in here in the episode. There's a lot of interesting directions information comes from, and
Sure.
to learn more about your insights into those too. So lots of cool things happening.
Yeah, lots.
It's like terrifying how many. We won't be able to touch on them all, but
No, but
that's okay. We're not meant to capture everything. But I'm curious, like, have you, in any particular sense, have you experienced what you would dub revelation in your life? Is that something that you've experienced, or would you not use that word, perhaps?
yes, yeah. And this is what I was referring to before. Um, Having a revelation, uh, an understanding, or just sort of this revealing to me. When I first became a father, and I mentioned before, and I've probably over mentioned it too many times about my kids. Um, them coming home at the ages of 3 and 6. Um, there was a big learning curve. How do we deal with human beings that aren't just little lumps of
Yeah,
flesh
human.
that that don't know what to do except pee and eat and cry and sleep? Um, and I did have that. Uh, Visceral is the wrong word, but a real clarity that I was bound to two things. I was bound to my children, to raise them as best I could. And I just felt this in this moment upon meeting them. Um, I felt very protective in that instant, and I was bound to them, to love them and serve them, I guess, to keep them safe and to teach them. But I was also bound as a human being and the son of my father to make the very mistakes that he made with
Oh,
me, and it was going to be a great struggle
yeah.
to not do that. And because I grew up going, I'm never going to be like him.
Don't we all?
Yeah, exactly. There were certain things I loved about him, but there were things I'm never going to do that as a parent. And I had this moment of, oh shit, shoot, sorry, sorry. Just that's what I felt in the moment. Just like, I am going to make those mistakes, and will I wreck my kids?
Yeah.
It's just in this moment, this very brief moment, you have this tidal wave of reality going. You're not going to be not like your father.
Yeah.
You're going to be like him, and you're going to have to work hard to not be. So don't
Mm.
think you get to waltz into this just ready to make all the right choices. So my brain just told me all this in that moment as I'm seeing my children for the first time, and it was crazy. So
Yeah.
revelation, I think so. It was revealed to me that I was not going to be the dad I wanted to be, but I could get there. Just it's going to take work.
Oh, and we're gonna put a pin in this because we're gonna come back to that comment, because I think that
Sure.
is so close to how I experienced one of Viren's lines later in the episode. Um,
Mm,
but before we dive into the episode, we have to remind our listeners what happened in the episode. Uh,
yeah.
we are our guest's favorite thing to do on the podcast, which is the 30-second recap. Um, and so I'm gonna give you a choice. Would you like to go
I'll go first.
first? Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Amazing. Are you ready?
Yes.
As ready as you can be. Awesome.
Yep.
All right. I'm going to count you down from three, and then you'll have 30 seconds. Three, two, one, go.
Ezrin, Corvus, and Soren and dragons go to try and get the help of the dragons. Rayla and Callum visit Janai and Amaya to say, "Hey, we're here." And what? There's a surprise. You're getting married. Hey, surprise! Viren and his kids are floating on the river, and he's having his dreams. And there's water, and he goes underneath, and he starts having, and they have to pull him out. And forgetting something. Too fun. Oh boy.
Time. Amazing.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, 30 seconds goes by so fast. Yeah, amazing. All right, I
One
have
day
the
I'm going to nail that.
I mean, listen, it's great. It's perfect as it is. Uh
Let's hear yours.
You count me down. I will time it,
Hmm.
but you can count me down from three.
3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so dragons assemble at Pride Rock, and Ezranus asks for their help, and then Janai has a nightmare, and Viren will do anything for family. He says that a lot, and then that scares Soren, and he loses him and his family, and then Raylan arrive at camp, and then learn about marriage, and Janai denies interest to Luxoria, and then Kareem sweats a little bit in the desert, and Viren falls off a boat, and Amaya joins Raylan to Luxoria, and Janai blesses their journey to Luxoria, and then Claudia fights to keep Viren alive because she is like super driven right now, and it's a lot. So that's 30 seconds. Okay.
Oh, yeah, well done. Kareem, I knew I was missing Kareem's storyline.
He like they bury the lead with Kareem. He's like only in there for like a solid 30 seconds, so that's no
Yeah,
worry. um Amazing. Okay, so
good job.
lots of cool things happening, and I'm now reminded of all of those, but I want to go into the depth of our conversation, the where the meat, so to speak, which is to say, what is a moment of revelation in this episode that you would like to take us to first?
Um, well, listen, I mean, I think it's the obvious answer for me. Uh, Not that there's right or wrong, but I think just the fact that in this fevered dream nightmare that Viren he is having moments of revelation. He is having these moments of clarity, and I think for me personally, as the actor, I'm saying I read those scripts and I go, yes, finally we're seeing this. We're seeing moments that are we've had a plateau and now we're working somewhere because you want the character to move, you want the story to move, and it's important. It's also very big, um, and it's just a beginning of what's to come. So I think that's the moment I would point people towards. Selfish of me, but yeah, it's a good
No,
storyline.
I think it's so like it's so juicy, right? There's so much going on in every scene, not just
Yeah,
to pick one of them and probably spend a dissertation on any of the one scenes. But like when you look at them together, I think what comes to me is there's a series of questions around this, which is what is the difference between a dream, a nightmare, a
yeah.
revelation? Like I'm curious what differentiates one from the other.
Well, I mean, Janai has a dream,
Yeah.
which is something historical. She doesn't get any information from it that she didn't already know in that moment, right?
The thing that's interesting there, though, is I saw someone who put a direct comparison between the original scene and then the dream, and they're almost
Oh,
exactly identical, except for the fact that Janai, as she experiences it, gets the vision of her vision going.
that's
Um,
right. Yeah,
and for me, like that feels to me like a nightmare. But
yeah.
but like, what, if anything, could that be revealing? Like, is that a revelation? Is there something to be learned from this that uh because there are theories out there that you're going to have this dream and it's going to repeat until you have learned the lesson, until your body has learned why you're having this dream. And that's not necessarily correct, but it is a theory that is out there.
Sure.
um, so I don't know. Like it's a weird question. Like, is she learning something? And I don't know. But you also mentioned when you were describing Revelation and what it is, was that there's a thought like that it is like prophecy.
Yeah,
And there's a thought where, like, oh no, is this a foreshadowing moment for Janai? Or is this, like, and we don't know, right? And there's just so much that it could be that without more information, this is what leads to people being like, trust your faith. When I'm like, or maybe it's giving you something else and being open to the interpretation.
that's a really good thought. That's a good observation. Yeah.
right?
Counter ca- counter that with Viren, what Viren's going through, and that also is historical. It's not some fantastical dream, which I mean it is, of course. We see in episode 2 some crazy Mad Men, Twin Peaks stylized
Yeah.
cool stuff, but the meat of it is the people from his past and moments. But then there's also things that are revealed, and that is a revelation. Him talking to himself as a younger man and hearing his own words that gives him comfort,
Yeah.
or that maybe not comfort so much as it allows him to trust for a moment in this craziness. I
Yeah.
hear myself speaking to me as a younger man. I will put my trust in that briefly,
Yeah.
and that's of course the end of that episode.
And it's just that moment for me was a moment where I had to like pause and sit for a minute after watching it for the first time because one, the way you differentiated your young and old voice was just like I was like, how did this happen? I was just like, oh my gosh. So I was kind of like taken aback by that, but also
That's great.
like there's a lot of therapeutic modalities where you invite a client to talk to their younger self in role play. And
Yeah,
there's so much healing that can happen in those moments. And it was just a very interesting way to like, okay, I need to rewatch that scene because what is said is so interesting. And so I guess the question for me is current Viren the one receiving that revelation, or is it child or slash younger Viren that is being healed through revelation via the information? Does that make sense? Like, is the inner younger Viren receiving healing in this moment, or
oh,
or is it the older Viren that is receiving that? Does that make sense as a question?
as a person, and we've talked about this in the past, as a person who's, I'm a 48-year-old man who I've taken my children to counseling, and I've discovered that I too need that counseling. And part of that involves referring to the younger me and the uh what's the word I'm looking for? The pain and suffering that I went through as a younger person, as a child, got buried, and
Mm-hmm.
I have to recognize how that affected younger me, to which then made this guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's such a wonderful question, and I think you've worded it perfectly. I think present day Viren, of course, is having those oh yeah moments,
Yeah.
but that also helps younger Viren who had the trauma is the word I was looking for, helps deal with that trauma,
Yeah.
which is also inside older Viren.
Yes.
We
Yes.
let the younger person, find the freedom and find the healing from that. And that gives present day older me, sorry, I'm going back and forth between Viren and myself, but
Yeah.
it, I could step out of the room after an hour of that and just breathe easy and go, I feel lighter, and
Yeah.
that crap is not hidden in the corner anymore.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to think about too from Viren's perspective because I think what this series of whether you call it delusion, dream, nightmare, revelation, whatever you call these moments, Viren is emerging on the other side of them with more information and
Yeah,
different perspective. And I think what's really interesting is that is coming across to the audience as these reminders of his past are affecting his present,
sure.
right? And it's not necessarily the memories, but how the memories are um, changed, so to speak, into something new in these visions that
New
lead
and useful, yeah.
that leads to something else. And speaking specifically to this, to Claudia, right? And there's this really beautiful parallel between Viren and Claudia that's happening, especially in this episode, where, Viren's diving down in his memory to save Claudia, just as Claudia is diving down in real life to save Viren
Yeah.
at the bottom of the water. And it's a very interesting parallel because, in a way, it's like he's trying to save her from doing the very thing she's doing at this moment, right?
Yeah.
And it's, in a way, it's pretty tragic, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, it's hard to say whether that is a revelation for the viewer or whether that's a revelation for Viren, right? Because Viren is experiencing it very differently.
Well, I think it's both.
Yeah,
Um, and whoever it's meant for, we always serve the story first,
exactly.
and we also serve the audience in the sense that they can then take what they want from it and do what they will with it.
Yeah.
I think I found it interesting from day one that you just pinpointed that is that they're doing the same thing. It's like two sides of a mirror.
Yeah.
He's doing one thing and she's doing the other in a different time, not even different time, just different moment, but at the same time. And then in that moment, we see Viren looking into a mirror, and there's two of him doing the exact same thing, but they're two different.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. Um, but is it for the audience? I 100% think it is because we've talked. There's just been nothing but talk for the last 4 years, 5 years about redemption and will Viren find redemption?
Yeah.
I've always been a firm believer that he will, and I'm not saying that he will, but this is a really good start. And with redemption, there needs to be forgiveness.
Mm.
Uh, but in the moment, the path is he's not there yet, but he's on his way. So it's a struggle. He's fighting through it.
Well, and redemption is such a complicated word for me because I to be redeemed, one needs to make repairs. And
Yeah,
like Viren has done some unspeakably bad things,
yeah,
but the sentimentality of feeling we are feeling his remorse. We are feeling his love and like deep commitment to his family. And those two things can exist at the same time. And we can now better understand, perhaps, we don't have all the information, but we can better understand where he's coming from. But is that the same thing as redemption, or is that just forgiveness? Is that something where we now just have a better sense of empathy for why he might have made the decisions? But like also, redemption without accountability and repair is a dicey thing. So I'm excited to see how the Dragon handles it.
yes. I think I misspoke. I don't know if actually there needs to be forgiveness for redemption. Maybe that is a key part of it. But you nailed that. There does need to be uh, repair. He does need to fix what he has broken, take responsibility for it. Whether or not the person he acted against forgives him, does that mean he's not redeemed, or can he walk away after fixing it unforgiven? But is he redeemed at that point?
Yeah, it's wild.
Maybe in his own heart. I don't know. Yeah,
Well, and it's also thinking about it from whose perspective is he,
yeah,
like, right? And so will Soren offer him and feel that he has been redeemed versus will Claudia versus will Catullus, right? And
yeah.
so there's a lot of perspectives that need to be addressed. And I think that right now what we're seeing is warming the audience up and warming the reader up, so to speak, on his relationship with Soren. And I think, we both have been mentioning like the audience, and I say that in quotes, as like a a reason why this has been created. But these things, these visions happen outside of an audience perspective, in real life. Like we are not designed for an audience, and
That's
yet
right. Yeah.
these things aren't uncommon to people, right? There's a reason this happens and why it speaks to us in a certain way. It's because it's pretty close to real sometimes what's going on. It may not be precision, like pinpointing exactly right, but this is a very plausible like vision to have had while under considering Viren's past,
Yeah.
right? Um, and so I just I think it wouldn't work so well if it wasn't plausible.
That's right. It'd be more cartoony, and then people could dismiss it so easily.
Yeah. And to be fair, I think some people watched this and did because it was probably too close to real to want to experience or so far from what they have experienced that it seemed far-fetched. And
Sure.
those are both also very possible. Um
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Uh, so there's one other element to this that I want to speak to, and I'm going to return to this idea of prophecy that you lifted up in terms of the definition, which is we're going to be jumping to episode 9 a little bit, but this vision of Claudia in the ocean, right?
Hmm.
And you mentioned that there an element of revelation sometimes has prophecy, and what we see is a vision that we see directly in the future. And
Right.
I'm curious what your take is on that, and where did that come from?
So we're talking about. Are we jumping ahead to
We can, yeah,
episode 9? Is what you're saying?
yeah. I mean, that's this
Yeah.
vision he has of her standing in the water and then being hit by a tidal wave is almost like shot for shot what happens in episode 9, with which is what brings Viren out of his what I'm calling a catatonic state. Um,
Yes. But what we see happen, of course, is she's able to control. She doesn't need to be saved
yeah,
in that moment from being, in the water, of course. But her mental state,
correct.
um,
It's like
she needs saving from that, and it takes us right back to earlier seasons of Viren being in the same situation. We go, this is just it's
yeah.
going from father to daughter, and it's terrifying.
Well, which brings like one of probably the driving points for me that I've been thinking about with this is that revelation is up to interpretation, like, period. And one could interpret this tidal wave that takes Claudia down as metaphor, right? Rather than the literal, no, she's capable in the water and she'll be fine. But
Yeah,
like this metaphor of like, okay, she's going underwater and she loses her leg, right? And so this tidal wave could also represent all of the things that you mentioned in terms of like her mental state and all of the other things, right? Rather than just the physical limitations. And I think oftentimes it is our nature, it is especially in the United States, our nature to be skeptical of anything we do not understand
sure.
and to even fear that which we cannot understand. And part of me wonders if we experience revelation more often, but we aren't willing to label it that because it feels like we have less control than we actually do. Is that that seems probably a little out of left field? I'm curious. So I'm curious what.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking about the dream. I'm thinking about Viren's dreams, and if I'm being completely honest, uh, I've seen everything that he has gone through, and I love. That's why I loved watching it, because reading it on the script has a pulling it from the script and performing it, and just envisioning what it's going to look like. It's so different, of course.
Yeah.
But seeing the visual of the giant red wave, and I see that solely as Viren projecting himself, his own bad choices, everything he's done wrong, his just overpowering need for whatever his power and whatever it is. I see all that as himself. So when
Mm,
she's wading into the water, he is wading out to rescue her from him. That wave is him. It represents his suffocating, drowning
yeah,
personality, drive to succeed, and no matter who gets hurt.
yeah,
And he sees it clearly in that moment that only he can save her from himself.
yeah.
I may be off the mark on that, but I don't know if there actually is a mark. I think what you said earlier is that exactly right. It's up to interpretation, and I personally like that because I tend to see that, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but I tend to see that in a lot of moments in my life. I've
Absolutely.
got to I've got to save my kids or my wife or friends from some asinine thing I did, and it's
Yeah.
represented in this thing that happened. So on the screen in an animation form, you can have something like a giant blood red tidal wave coming to crush his daughter. And that's the culmination of everything he's done. And he's just pushed her into it. Now he's
Well,
got to save her.
think what I'm reminded of as you speak is the practice of asking questions of like a tarot deck or the Tao Te Ching, or like asking questions of certain modalities that like any skeptical person would be like, that's all fake, right? But it's up to interpretation, right? And
Yeah.
so you go into it with an open mind and you see a certain symbol that has a certain connotation and you apply that to your experience, the revelation might come not from the fact that that card happened, but from the fact that you now have new insight because of the thought process that it brought you. And that in and of itself is a revelation. The question then is that a divine revelation? Is that coming from something that is greater than ourselves, or is that
Yeah.
something that's coming from within us? And I think that's one of the great debates that people have. But to me, that is, and I'm not willing, I don't know that I'm willing to call it God, but I am willing to call it divine. Like I'm willing to call it something that is greater than myself. And that's just an interesting thing to think about.
I don't disagree with you, but I do question if we look at it practically, what else is there in Viren's mind when he's having these dreams, uh, other than himself putting moments, choices, animating them in a certain form, like his children
Absolutely.
coming and seeing these moments, spotlighting these moments, and with Kapar uh, and then moments that haven't happened where he's going out after his daughter. There's no intervention there by outside forces. I guess you could call it a divine, something divine has, but we've never touched on that in the Dragon Prince.
No.
Uh,
And I don't know that I would call it like that. No, I'm not claiming that the Dragon Prince has like, oh, there's a god acting now. That's
Deities or anything. Yeah,
but
right.
in the larger sense of something, I guess, is the like, and it's one of the things I love about fantasy is that there's already magic. Like this idea that something that is wild to someone without magic is like, oh, like they do magic, right? This is like well within the bounds of what is possible. Is
Yeah,
this magical force? One could argue maybe this vision is a byproduct of doing dark magic for so long, and
yeah. That's what I was getting at. Yeah,
the toll of doing dark magic for years and years and years is that the body keeps the score, and it's paying it back right now to Viren and
yeah.
saying, you know what I mean,
Oh, that's a good way of putting that.
right? And I think that I talked about this with on episode 2 last week with Sasha, who was our guest,
Yeah,
and we were talking about these visions, and a lot of what we talked about was the body keeping the score, and Viren's body has gotten to the point where he has not listened for so long, and it is reminding him of saying, hey, this is what you care about, and you've just literally died.
yeah,
And I want to like that trauma lives in the body, and it is now taking its toll by giving him all of this information in a specific way. I think that the body is communicating with Viren because this is in some way, shape, or form providing Viren with information that he needs to survive. That's my thought.
That's a great theory. Uh, I find no fault in that. I do like that a lot. And piggybacking on what we said earlier, or what you said earlier, there is magic and there's dark magic. So who knows? Again, I was saying there's no deity, but magic is so powerful in this world, in this place, that who knows how it just intrinsically gets into every fiber of the person, including their spiritual. I mean, there is spirituality to it, and so maybe, yeah, I've never thought of it that way, so I really appreciate that opinion.
On a big tangent, I can't believe yeah, man, there's a lot going on here.
It's a revelation to me, actually. Oh.
Yeah. Look at but don't go. Yeah. Amazing. What else do we want to talk about in regards to Viren here, or are there other places we want to go for a moment?
No, it's a big deal. Okay, I think it's a big deal what we're seeing and the shift that we're seeing in Viren. And I was surprised. Maybe I was just looking too hard for it. I was surprised that I didn't see more online where we get all of our information of people saying, "Oh, this is interesting. He's not coming around, but he's really going through some changes, and his character changes are going through some sort of interesting arc. One might call that a character arc."
Oh, yeah.
And because that's what people have been asking for. Will he go through a character arc? Will he always stay a villain? My argument has always been, well, he's not a villain,
right?
He's this, and he's this, and he does villainous things, and he maybe I don't mind labeling him as the bad guy because it's fun to play bad guys, but there's so much more to him, and now we're seeing him reap the rewards of his, for lack of a better term, his bad doings, his evil doings.
Absolutely.
But he's trying to grow through that stuff as well. He's trying to actually be better.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I noticed that at the beginning of season 4. As soon as he wakes up, this immediate hesitancy to grapple with dark magic, the panic attacks, the things that Viren experienced, this has all been leading to this moment, to these visions that he's having right now in his subconscious. Right, it feels to me like this is a very much a climactic point for him in terms of his change. This whole season, I guess, since he goes out and under and out a few times. But yeah, I absolutely, I very rarely talk online.
Yeah, I've been staying off. I read people, like fans, ideas, but that's where it started. Season 4, that's where that starts. That's where we plant that seed. But then I see so much at that point. I saw a whole lot of excuse me, a lot of people saying too late.
Yeah,
he's done too much. He can't be saved. And yeah, guys, there's such a great story to be told. Yeah, just watch it unfold. Anyway, yeah.
Well, and that's one of the things I guess I did see online is I saw several people on Twitter go, "I told you so." Like as soon as his relationship with Soren, like people were like, "I knew it. I told you that he was a loving, kind father." And what I mean? So there was a lot of that. And even so, it's still complex because you're willing to do anything for your family, however vile. It takes its toll.
Yeah, in Soren's case, I mean, a loving father, sure. Kind father, no.
Yeah, maybe when he was
younger, there was no kindness there. But yeah, it's deep and it's complicated. It's complicated.
Short version of the podcast. If you want the TLDR, it's complicated.
It's complicated. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. Oh, okay. Um, I'm gonna take us to Ezrin really quick. I found it really interesting right at the beginning of the episode with Ezrin in this speech.
Yeah,
Um, to the dragons on what I'm dubbing Pride Rock. Um,
yeah,
the the he is revealing information to these dragons. And so, in a way, this is a revelation for all of these dragons, right? In the literal sense. And Zubeia calls all of these dragons forward, and Ezrin speaks with the authority of Zubeia because she is standing right behind him,
right there.
clearly supporting him. And um, I'm curious. I am willing to label this as a revelation, but the question I have is what makes this a revelation to these dragons versus merely a request? Like, it is the difference only that there is new information, or is there something else to it? And I
No,
don't know.
I think it has a lot to do with the fact that Zubeia is there
Mm,
and uh, what she's gone through with her mate, and well, what all the dragons have gone through history, dealing with elves and humans, and the fact that she is there with three humans, allowing this young child human to speak to all of them,
dialed.
and she doesn't say a word. I mean, she does at the beginning to get their attention, but otherwise, Ezrin does all the work, and I think that, and they trust her, so I think that speaks volumes.
Yeah.
So
And I think that helps me pinpoint, I think, my question, which was like, it wouldn't have felt like a revelation had Ezrin gone to each of these dragons individually and asked them for help. But the act of the revelation seems to not be in the request that Ezrin is making, but in realizing and having the connection made that Zubeia is supporting this full send,
yes,
right?
yeah,
Um, which wasn't said, it wasn't verbalized, but the revelation comes from the symbol rather
yeah.
than literal. Um,
He could
which,
have climbed up there by himself and said, "Dragons, hear me." No one would have listened to him. Maybe
yeah,
one or two, but
you're right.
what power or authority does he have over them? None. They would have no idea who he is. Maybe so. The fact that she's towering over him and them,
Yeah,
it does. Yeah, it speaks volumes.
yeah, that was an interesting point that's helpful that you have given us that light. So I want to move to one more moment for me in this episode around Janai, and Janai specifically because there's this moment in the episode where she forbids progress from Rayla and Callum going into Luxoria. And that moment is really intense because this is kind of leaning on the reflection that was written pre-season with
Mm-hmm.
uh, Kareem, who was our kind of main character in the episode or in the reflection, but we see the devastation in that reflection of what happens to people who go into Luxoria.
Yeah,
And we who have read that reflection and then watch this episode have context for why Janai is denying them progress and denying them access to Luxoria. It's from a place of, I want to keep you safe, and I know how tragic it is and how easily people are lost. And in the wake of Callum being like, I have the pressure of the world might actually be ending. Surprise! And it's really interesting because whether that's hyperbole or not, right? With Callum revealing that is a huge revelation that requires a lot of unpacking. Like, what do you mean the world is ending? And Callum explains the Starchuff shelf is about to take over the world and blah blah blah. And Janai is still like, nope, life is still my revelation is more important than yours, in other words. And I'm curious for you, um, what your take is on that. Like, when the thing that has been revealed to me is more important than the thing that has been revealed to you. And I'm curious if you've experienced that. I'm curious how you receive this version of it on screen. There's a lot going on here, and there's a lot. And I want to know what you think.
Oh, well, I mean, in my own life, I would only assume that we've all been in that moment of this is important to me. Yeah, but this is important to me, and this is more important. And being on uh, the losing end of that battle or that argument. Yeah, but this is. I mean, it's a parent teenager back and forth all the time.
Yeah, it is.
So go through it all the time. And as a parent, I can recognize in my children that angsty, that feeling of you never listen to me. And I go, huh, I kind of feel the same way
Yeah.
as a parent. You never listen to me, but I'm smarter than you, and I have more wisdom, and I know what I'm saying. I know how you feel because I've been there. But this is more important. Do
Yeah.
what I say. In terms of that moment or that scene, I didn't even think twice about it, to be honest. I looked at those kids and I thought, they're not going to listen to her. They're
Yep.
going.
Nope.
This is Rayla.
Yeah.
Rayla is not beholden to Janai or Amaya.
Really,
She
anyone.
doesn't give a she doesn't give a crap about what they say. She is going, and Callum will follow her. That was the only thing I thought of when I saw that. I'm like, okay, she's saying no, and it's all serious, and I say so. And I thought it's going to cut to them packing up, ready to go.
And so it shall be.
And
Yeah.
that's what happened. I went, yeah, that tracks. That is teenagers right there, exactly. So
So what's interesting though is this was on both ends, I think, indicative of real life in that I think this conversation would have gone very differently had they both gone through the full explanation of why.
sure, yeah,
And
communication.
Denai doesn't explain why she forbids progress. She just says it's bad, right?
She
And like,
she flexes.
yeah. And that is a common parent move, which is to say, I'm smarter than you, I have more information than you. Like do what I say, right? And it's it seems like we could get to a better position if we were willing to be like, okay, I hear why this is important to you. Can I explain why I want to keep you out of there? Here are all of the reasons.
Yeah,
And that takes more time, it takes more energy, it takes more effort, it takes more patience, it takes a lot more of a lot more things. Um, and I don't know if that would
yeah.
have offered. Like I don't know. I just don't know. There's a lot.
All that time taking, that's just called better parenting.
Yeah.
And it goes back to that moment I was talking about earlier where I said, I will not be like my father. I'll do my own things. And that's one of the key things, growing up is that my parents didn't communicate with me. So it was always do that and that's it.
Yeah.
As a parent, I definitely try and say, hey, listen, here's why this is what I'm saying and why we're going to do it this way. And then I have my wife say to me, you might as well stop talking. They are zoned out. You've lost them. You've talked too much. You've
Yeah.
explained too much. And now they're back to maybe I'll just go and do this thing I was told not to do. so
Yeah.
there's something to be said about being succinct.
Yeah. It's there's a fine line of like, nope, here's the line, and I can't give you more information because of all the
Yeah,
other circumstances. And this quote better parenting model of I'm gonna take the time to explain everything that needs to be said so that you really understand why I'm telling you no.
yeah. Both have their own time and place. Both are legit.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just I think it's the egregious judgment on so many people's parts when they see people making the opposite choice than they would have made in that moment, because and then calling that bad parenting when in reality they made a decision with they made the best decision they could with the information they had at the time,
Yeah, that's right.
and trusting in that process. And yes, people can do better, people can grow and learn and be better, and trusting that people are doing their best, which is not easy, but I
No.
think will lead to a better space.
Yeah, you hope so.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Um, that's amazing. Well, what I would love to invite you to, if you have any other big moments that you want to talk about. Otherwise, we'll transition into our next segment.
No, that's good. We've touched on a lot of. I mean, I'm actually. You've got me thinking about, because I read the scripts and then I do my prep, whatever that means, and then I go in and I record, and sometimes magic happens, and you get somewhere and you connect with the character, and you go, "Wow, I didn't see it that way." And then you wait and wait and wait and wait, and you finally see the animated version, and you go, "Wow, it's amazing with the music and the way they've animated my character's face, the way he's saying that." He said, and then you say, "Hey, what about this?" And I go, "Oh, what? I didn't even think of that."
Yeah.
That's exactly how that feels. So yeah, no, there's plenty there.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so cool about this too is if you bring someone else into the conversation, all of a sudden you have a whole new version of what
Yeah,
that. And it's like it's just every time it's just so expansive, and that's why this is such a cool process. Uh,
agreed.
yeah, amazing. All right, we're gonna take a short break, and we'll be right back in just a moment. All right, everybody, welcome back. We're so glad you're here. We are excited to dive into our sacred practice for the episode. This whole season, we're taking on a sacred practice every episode to continue to learn more and dive more deeply into the Dragon Prince and see what it can teach us. And these practices kind of help us do that outside of the lens that we chose for the episode. And we are revisiting Lectio Divina again today. We did that with Sasha last week, and we're doing it this week again. And just as a reminder, we are going to pick a random sentence from the show, from the episode, and we're going to take a 4-step reading practice. And we're going to walk on this ladder down into the text, as kind of the monks have offered the metaphor from Lectio Divina. It is a practice that has been really cool to experience with our guests before, and Jason has done it with us once before already, and so a pro at this point, naturally. So Jason, I chose a random sentence I picked from all of the various Viren spots. And then once I had those time frames, I picked a random time frame, and this is the sentence I found. Every step I took because I had to. And that is the sentence we're going to take this practice on. And so the first step is the literal meaning. What is literally happening in the episode when this line is said? And do you happen to recall what was literally happening during this line?
Um, in the show, what's
Yeah.
happening?
Yeah.
This is near the. I mean, this is at the end, isn't it?
It sure is. Exactly. This
Talking
is,
to himself. Yeah.
yeah. So the literal meaning is that Viren is talking to his younger self,
Yeah.
and it's right before you see that he's talking to his younger self, I believe. And then it's revealed that that's who he's
Oh
talking to.
yes. Yeah. He says, "Here we are again," and he says, "But
Yeah.
this time," and then he said, "Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Which makes it really interesting because it suggests that that he's been talking to himself the whole time, which is even more interesting because with that mirror, you thought it might be Erebos, you thought it might be something else, and nope, it's himself.
Yeah." But it was such a powerful moment. May I for a second?
Oh, please, absolutely.
It was such a powerful. Maybe is the wrong word, but um, it was such a connection for me, as it should be, I think, to season 2 when he's staring into the mirror and he's screaming at it that
Yeah.
it's, it's, to paraphrase, it's worthless. It's because it's made nothing of itself. But he's talking to himself,
Yeah. So
of
that's such a good
course.
reminder. Oh, wow.
And then we see him say, "Here we are once again, face to
Yeah.
face." Whatever he says, I can't remember. It's the exact same moment, but
Wow.
now the mirror is talking back
Yeah.
because
Wow.
he has such a there's such a stiff back, such a um, I'm in control in this moment, and he just loses that control instantly when the younger self says, "No, here's what's happening,"
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
Versus him just railing at himself, screaming and throwing things and lighting the room on fire,
that
throwing a tantrum.
really makes me want to go rewatch that scene and envision that he's talking to his younger self instead of
Yeah,
just himself in this moment. Like,
it's
why?
really yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, this is incredible because what this does is you have jumped down to the next rung on the ladder, which is perfect because we got that literal meaning, and then you took us to the next one immediately, which is exactly what the practice does, which is the allegorical meaning. What other
Yeah.
moments in the show does it remind us of? And that was you did it. There it is.
Yeah.
And then it also is asking us of other moments in other media, so other stories that it might remind us of as well. And so I'll read it once more. Every step I took because I had to.
Um, can you give me an example of
So
what you're
I'm on
thinking?
Lord of the Rings kick. I did this for last episode too, but this is reminding me of Lord of the Rings. In the sense of I think about like I feel like this is cheating because I'm literally referencing a very similar thing that I did with Sasha.
Yeah.
But thinking about this hobbit who is told that if you don't do this, the world will end and Sauron will take over and like will burn everything. And thinking about like every step I took because I had to. And just envisioning what might be going through Frodo and Sam's mind as they go through all of these
Mm.
hellish experiences that are terrible, and thinking about like what is gonna when you look back on this, it's every step I took because I had to. um, and I'm reminded of that. That is something that I'm reminded of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if we're sticking with pop culture, I go right to somebody like Thanos,
Oh,
who
ooh, that's a good point too.
who is doing it for the greater good. Well, the
Exactly.
greater good would be the entire universe. So he's
Yep.
actually doing it for only half of the greater good
Fair.
because he knows. So that's sort of broken. That whole idea of doing it for the greater good, that kind of collapses into that argument collapses in on itself because he's murdering half of the population. But that whole idea of I did what had to be done.
Yeah, and
I
that's
think he may have that line or something similar to it.
yeah. Well, it's a it is a common villain line,
It's a
right?
trope, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that it doesn't mean it's not true. It doesn't mean that this person didn't feel that, but what it does
Yeah.
is it reveals something about that person in that they believe that what they are doing was done justly and rightly, and um, that's kind of what it reveals to me, I guess.
I also think, and this is a little off, but I also think that Josh Brolin is a fantastic actor, and
Mm,
he was able to take the writing that he was given and put it into. We still despise Thanos for what he did, but there's something about him, darn it, that is attractive, and you go, yeah, I want to hear this guy out. Uh, and I don't fight for him or I don't cheer him on, but I go, he is disgusting and despicable, but he's not plain and basic and flat.
yeah,
There's a lot of three dimension to that guy where you go, maybe he has a point.
yeah,
And you shake your head and go, oh no, what am I saying? No, no, no. I mean, he doesn't, but
and
maybe.
and that's what's been so interesting about the Dragon Prince too, is that we got a very one-dimensional view of Viren, and we're starting to see Viren in 3D, so to speak, and we're starting to see more of him and see what's underneath all of the things that our previous assumptions about his character are being challenged.
Yeah.
And I think that's neat that it's bringing us to that. Okay. So we've got step one, the literal meaning. Step two, the allegorical meaning. We've brought in various other things from pop culture, and now we're dropping down on the ladder one more rung to the third step, which is, what does this line remind us of in our own lives, our personal experience? So we had this fictional experience and other stories in round two, but on step three, it's in our own lives. So once more, every step I took because I had to.
I mean, people are going to get sick and tired of me saying this, but my life is driven uh, by my family. It revolves around my family. Everything I do, and I've said this plenty, everything I do is for my family. So any choices I make for work, anything that takes me from them, it is so that they have a roof over their heads, they have
Mhm.
food to eat. So everything I do, every literal step that I take that takes me away from them
Yeah.
is not but every work, every job that I do is for them so that
Mhm.
they have a comfortable, safe life.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
I transferring that over to Viren? I'd like to say that he is the same, but no, there's certainly, we certainly have our own shallow and selfish motivations
Yeah, of course.
as
And
human beings. But
I think it was this episode where Kabar, um,
yeah,
he says, he calls him out. He says, everything I did for my family. He's like, you did it for power.
yeah,
Uh, you did it for power, like you always have.
yeah.
Which I thought was a really interesting moment, because this inner story versus this story from a mentor and teacher is like, those don't line up. And so I can't wait to see more of where that might come from. But
That's a great note, by the way. That's because it's such an open. That's a window opening. We don't quite see in yet, but we go, oh, what? Because Viren's face is like, oh,
yeah.
yeah,
And it's defensive. And I think this to me is a defensive statement, right? It is defending what I have done, right? Every step I took because I had to, is a line that is said to justify what I have done.
yeah,
And for me, what I'm reminded of, not necessarily actions that I regret doing mistake wise per se, but what feels difficult and challenging and harmful. So again, this is my fourth year of graduate school, and it has not been a breeze.
yeah,
And like I keep on, this for me is a reminder in that sense of, I made these decisions for a reason, and I'm going through this pain for a reason,
yeah,
right? Like every step I took, I did because I had to. And what that doesn't correctly view in the perspective is that I shouldn't have had to, right? And like there are certain things I should not have had to do that I had to because of the systems that are in place. And this statement doesn't encapsulate what is not said in that regard. And I think that's true for Viren too, right? Like there are so many things that Viren had to experience that were outside of his control, that in a different environment, in a more supportive environment, in a different world with more healthcare and more support for children, perhaps, like he would not have had to resort to dark magic, right? In a world perhaps that is more unified, where the elves and the humans were working together and their healing arts were collaborative, maybe he wouldn't have had to resort to all these vile things. And I think taking the person and putting them in context is really important. I'm tearing up because this is really painful, because I like, there are things that I shouldn't have had to endure, and there are things that
yeah.
people everywhere shouldn't have to endure, but we blame ourselves for doing them, right? And when it's not our fault, it's the system, it's the surrounding context that makes it so that we have to make that decision.
Yeah, that makes sense. That is powerful, and it is also it's sobering to think about that.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, we have successfully, albeit with hesitation, gotten through 1 through 3, and we're going to come to step 4 and climb all the way into the depths of this line. Uh, this on step 4. And so there's a couple options you can choose from for step 4. The traditional one is contemplatio, which is what are you contemplating? In other words, what is this calling you to do?
Right.
Now that we've discussed this, now that we've had a conversation around it, what does this line challenge you to do? Or if you were to deliver a sermon using this line, what would be your message? Or in other words, if you were to give a short moral to a child and that's easy to understand, what would the moral be of this line? And so I'll read it one more time for our listeners. Every step I took because I had to.
Uh, yeah,
It's a
I
big one.
think there's yeah, it is, yeah, of course, yeah. I think I'd want to break it down. Um, I'd want to break it down if I was to call, a call to action. I kind of like that, but it's talking about raising someone or being a leader and
Mm-hmm.
trying to train someone. So raising a child. Um, you'd want to break it down and what do all the sections encompass? Like um, every step I took. Does this mean your physical actions? Does this mean I would sorry, I wouldn't put that into question. I would say this means your physical actions. This
Yeah.
means every word you speak, not only to other people but to yourself,
Yeah.
because that is your true person, who you are by yourself. Um, so every step you take, everything that represents you as you move forward, um, you do that because you have to in order to maintain your integrity, maintain your true self. Everything else will crumble, everything else will break or will break you. It'll grow heavy
Mm.
as your pretenses and your falsehoods and the things you put on for other people to see. You've got to act a certain way
Yeah.
because you have to maintain your humanity and your integrity as you move forward.
Mhm.
I think that might steer it away from the way we see it used in the
Yeah.
maybe in an everyday. I do this because I had to. I live my life a certain way because I have to. If I don't, I'm
Yeah.
not being true to myself, and I'm not being true to my family, those who love me, those who look up to me, those who
Yeah.
learn from me. I have to be who I am, and it's
Yeah.
never easy, and I fail lots, but
Like an integrity piece, a reminder, a call to integrity, I guess is what I'm hearing.
yeah, I don't know if I missed the mark there on step 4, but
Well, I think that's perfect. Yeah. Um, absolutely. So I think for me, I would be called to also kind of think about like how if I were to deliver a sermon or a speech or a message, a moral on this, I I would want to unpack the subjective around have to. Um,
mm,
who is dictating that you had to? Is it you? Is it culture? Is it a system? Is it like what is dictating that? And you recognizing the boundary between you opting into a system and you having the option to say no and questioning that have to perhaps is where I might go with
that gets deep.
yeah. And there's a lot there, and so like I would have to write several pages on it. But like that's what I'm drawn to in terms of this. Like I think that'd be a really interesting for a therapist to have a conversation with Viren and be like, "Who told you that you had to?" And like you know what I mean? And like I could see that turning into a wild conversation. Um,
Yeah.
but here we are. Amazing. We did it. We got through this practice and with this line, and what a rich conversation that was. I'm
Yeah.
that you were willing to do that with me. Thank you.
Yeah. My pleasure. Thanks. Thank you very much for leading us through that.
And speaking of gratitude, that is our final segment. Um, Asking the question, who in this episode are you grateful for and why?
Yeah. I'm going to be honest. I had a tough one. I do have an immediate answer, but I don't know if it's a weak one. So I, I try, I tried to look further in for deeper meaning, but I, uh, as far as the characters go
Mhm.
in the story at this time, uh, I would choose Claudia
Mm,
because she is the catalyst for Viren pushing himself into those moments. And going back to what I was referencing specifically, the idea of the danger that she's being put in his dreams
yeah.
is him. It's what he's built, what he's become. So she is put in front of those or put in the middle of those and forcing him to go into those and face them, uh, a different person. He's not going, yes, go further, my child.
Yeah.
Embrace the darkness. No, he's saying, get out of there. You're
Yeah.
better than that. This is evil. So I think that's where I land on that.
I love it. I love it. I am feeling grateful for Janai and not for her initial rebuff, but for her willing her she sees the information has changed and she realizes that they are going to go regardless of her consent. And
Yeah.
um, she, instead of preventing them, chooses to support them. And I think that that is a incredible act of love, of like of support, of kindness.
Support. Yeah.
There's just there's so much in that I'm grateful for because I am very rigid when it comes to like my internal rules, not so much like law rules, but like the rules that I have created for myself. And if I have set a rule, then it's very unlikely that I'm willing to let someone else break it. And I just love that she has demonstrated for me what it looks like to change your mind.
Yeah. She had the ultimate power to put spears in front of them, put swords at their throats, saying, "You will go nowhere."
Yeah.
She could have done that like that, but you're right. She took that, and that, my friend, goes back to, not to harp on this, but goes back to what I was talking about. Parents
Yep.
communicating and learning, and
Yeah.
making those choices that they wouldn't necessarily make.
Well, it's interesting too, because I bet that had she prevented Callum and like had she prevented them from going, she might have garnered more respect from the elves in the area, right?
Yeah,
It's possible that her flexibility and adaptability here is what leads to the later revolt that Miana takes from the encampment.
mm.
And I don't know, like this could be poor decision making on her part, and I'm still grateful for it.
Yeah. I think it's the right decision. I totally agree with you. I think that's a great choice, by the way.
Oh well, no big deal or anything. Thanks. I liked yours
Well,
too.
because she's fostering what will be, what we hope to see, anyways. Uh, that's a family. There's a family there. They
Yes.
will be family, and she's fostering that whole idea of you. She will be their aunt. She will be someone they can trust, someone who is strong and powerful, but she will listen to them, and she will make choices based on what they need.
Yeah.
And that's what family does. So I think that's an excellent choice.
Oh,
I've
now,
never thought of that.
oh, I love it. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that unfortunately that brings us to the end of our conversation. I'm reluctant to end it, but I would invite you to, if you want to be found, how would you like to be found by any of the listeners who are enjoying your company?
Oh, just they can find me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm mostly on Instagram now, but I'm on Twitter at a boy Simpson. So the at symbol, at a boy Simpson. And then Instagram is Simstagrams.
Brilliant.
Yep, and they'll find me there being just boring.
That's not true. I see some truth in
It's very true.
that. Amazing. And of course, everyone, you can find us at BNB_pod on all the things. We are not necessarily active, but that does not mean we won't respond. If you tweet at us or tag us, we'd be happy to engage. And I will definitely say we will engage you if you join our Patreon at BNB_pod as well. Would love to get to the point where we are offering our producer a living wage for his time. And with that,
Yeah,
we are entirely grateful for you again, Jason. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode.
it's been my great honor. Thank you for allowing me to speak from the heart and get emotional. And I don't get enough of those sort of uh, conversations.
We get it together.
Yeah, it's great.
Awesome. All right, everyone. Thank you for listening. Until next time, be well and do good.